What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. I learned a powerful lesson last night and today, which maybe one day I'll remember. But for now, I wanted to talk for a moment about some other podcasts, which I do from time to time. A friend of mine, Taylor VA, was just on the Pinball Podcast with Don and Jeff. And that was enjoyable to listen to. They talked about Wizard of Oz. And I also noticed, looking at the stats for my own podcast, that I have quite a few listeners from Australia. And I was a bit surprised at this. I know nothing about bingos in Australia, and I am more than a bit curious to know if any of them made it to Australia, where they might have been, what the local scene was like. I know Gottlieb had a big presence in Australia, with their EMs, especially the later ones, but I have no idea about anything else. I've never been to Australia, and the only thing I know about it is what I hear on the Pinheads Pinball Podcast, which is an excellent show, and I've really enjoyed listening to that one. The production values are much higher than my recorded in a converted garage with an air conditioner running in the background. But any of you folks in Australia, I would love to hear from you. Let me know if you ever saw a bingo and if it was paying off. I'm incredibly curious. So, moving on to another one of my mistakes. I said before, and I'll say it again, this is not a search disc episode. I will say that over the weekend, I took a bunch of time and took apart the search disc again and checked every single solder point on the underside, on the edges, and on the top to ensure that there were no partially broken wires. Jiggling the mini wires on the underside is quite the chore, but one that the search disc passed. And so at that point, I broke out the schematic and started looking at that and was testing various points, and everything was coming up roses as far as continuity. And so, in a fit of desperation, I emailed Phil Hooper. And Phil, if you'll recall, runs the Bingo Technical site on the web. And I said, hey, here's what's going on, and I laid out all the detail of the things that I had tested. And Phil emails back and says, well, here's what you need to test for, and he let me know. And one of the things he mentioned was the selection unit. Now, in a 6-card bingo, this unit controls how many cards are lit in order to score appropriately. So if you have only input 2 coins, it's only going to light the first 2 cards, and any numbers that you make on cards 3 through 6 will not count towards replays. So, in my hubris, I had stupidly discounted this unit, thinking that since it was lighting up card number 5, surely that was all it needed to do. Well, I don't think I could have been more wrong. As it turned out, there were a few wipers on that unit and a few feeds that jump off to other parts of the machine. And one of the feeds in particular is in line for the winner circuit. So the lesson that I learned, and the lesson which I would like to impart to all of you, my faithful listeners, and to myself one day, is that you should not ignore a unit just because you think it's doing the correct thing. Also, you shouldn't ignore a unit if you have never run across its like in any other machine. Now, this is the first 6-card machine I've ever worked on, and every 6-card machine, as far as I know, has one of these selection units. And again, I just said, well, surely that's working. No need to even look at it. So, tonight, I came home and soldered the single broken wire on the spider, and then tested it out, and sure enough, it scored on card number 5. So then I played a bunch of games, and I was able to rack up 256 credits before calling it quits, which equates to $64. So I was pretty thrilled with that result. So, in other news, this is big news now. My multimeter, which I'm constantly complaining about, over the weekend I also decided to do something about that, and took a look at the probes and realized that they were similar to Jones plugs. And a Jones plug has a male and a female component, and the female component on this couldn't be bent in to make better contact. But what I could do is take the male component on the probe and split it. So it was already quartered, but the quarters were all kind of crimped together, and so I just spread out the end, plugged it in, and what do you know, my cheapo meter now actually works appropriately. And for those of you wondering why I don't just throw it away, aside from being a cheapskate, I actually really like this meter's layout. Its display is large, and it has all the functions that I need and generally works appropriately. But now it works perfectly, which is pretty cool. So, 2 birds, 1 stone. It only took the involvement of everybody on the planet in order for me to realize that I was looking in the wrong spot. So big thanks especially to Phil Hooper and also to Steve Smith, who pointed out to me in the very beginning, you know, there's only so many things that can go wrong with search disk. And he was right as well. Now, I've worked on several machines that had search problems, and this one did have a search problem, but it wasn't the problem I was trying to resolve. So, lesson learned for today, and hopefully I'll remember that next time I crack open a bingo and realize that I'm looking at something that I've never seen before. I'll take a moment to read the manual and see where all those feeds are going to. Because very nicely Bally laid out every single soldered tab on each unit and where it goes to and what it's doing, and also its position on the schematic. So if I had taken but a moment and looked at that, it would have pointed me right in the middle of the winner circuit that I was looking at, and ignoring that disc. Oh well. For now, I'm enjoying it immensely, and the game, of course, has taken on an entirely new dimension since I can score in card number 5 again. So I'm really excited to get Ava back down here and see if we can run up quite a few replays together. All right, well, that's all for tonight, and thank you again for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. And I was serious about you guys from Australia. Please send me email, foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. And you can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, or on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.